Hello, everyone. My name is Danny the Two, and you're listening to the Danny the Two podcast. I hope you're having a good day so far. Hope you're having a good Wednesday because you're listening to this on Wednesday. Probably the Wednesday that it came out. That would be the best thing for you to do because I release episodes every Wednesday. I don't know if you guys have noticed what I'm doing here. I'm kind of trying to establish a little bit of familiarity and consistency in my podcast. So if you listen to this every week and you typically are a day late, you might listen to me talking about how it comes out on Wednesday and you're like, yeah, that's go classic Danny the Two over there. He's he's yelling at me for not listening on Wednesday. And if you are the type of person who listens to this on Wednesday, the Wednesday that it comes out, then you listen to this and you say, ha, he's saying that I'm awesome and I am a cool person and Danny the Two loves me and he would like to kiss me all over my body. Where at fuck. Okay, strike all that. None of that is important. Forget that happened. But yeah, I hope you listen to this on Wednesday just because I think it's cool. But, all joking aside, if you listen to it on a Thursday or a Friday or God forbid a Saturday, then you're still part of the family. You're still enjoying my content. I still think that's pretty cool. I just want to give a little shout out to the people who listen to it regularly and when it comes out because I just think that's awesome. I think that's cool that I've got people who are subscribed to the podcast and they see, oh, new episode from Danny the Two Cast. Let's go ahead and listen to that on my way to work or listen to that while I'm brushing my teeth or listening to that while I'm eating my breakfast or whatever. I think that's awesome. And if you're one of those people, thank you. If you're not one of those people, well, I don't really have anything to say to you. So thank you for listening to this on a Wednesday. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So I've spent 2 minutes of this podcast episode already, and I have not said shit. So let's go ahead and just hop on into the meat and potatoes of this article. I guess people say that. Some people say that. I don't get it, but some people say that they're the meat and potatoes of this podcast episode. So I am reading an article today by SciPost. It was written by Eric W. Dolan on December 12th, 2019. And this article is actually, I'm trying something a little bit new this time. I am actually going to, if you guys want to read the article, instead of putting it in the show notes, I'm actually going to, psych, it's in the show notes. This is where it always is. You can find the article in the show notes. So that's right where it is. You guys know right where to find it. The title, I'm going to go ahead and just read this. It's a pretty short article. I'm going in pretty blind. I kind of know the main points of it, but I'm going in blind just because I like to kind of learn along with it and I can give my thoughts around it while I'm reading it if I feel like I need to take a break. So I'm just going to hop into it. The title is Social Media and Television Use, but Not Video Games, Predict Depression and Anxiety in Teens. Very interesting conclusion right off the gate. They're coming out strong. Depression and anxiety are absolutely something that today's teens are dealing with. And this article does not seem to be saying that it's causing it. Maybe we'll get a little further and we'll realize that's not true, but it looks like it's a little bit more of an indicator. It's something that might be a little bit of a contributor. So let's just hop into it. New research provides evidence that some forms of screen time are linked to an increase in anxiety and depression symptoms among adolescents. Quote, it is very common to talk to our children about the negative consequences of alcohol use, smoking, and unsafe sex. However, nowadays, adolescents spend 6 to 7 hours in front of a digital screen, exposing themselves to information potentially dangerous for their mental health, end quote, says study author Elroy Bowers, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Montreal. Quote, to my knowledge, fewer parents talk to their children about the potential negative consequences of screen time. More awareness is needed. The researchers examined data from 3,659 children who were surveyed annually from the 7th grade through the 10th grade. The teens were asked to self-report time spent in front of a digital screen and specify the amount of time spent using social media, television, video games, and computers. The results, published in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry, found that a higher average frequency of social media use, television viewing, and computer use over the 4-year period predicted more severe symptoms of anxiety. Okay, breaking away from the article. First off, I like the methodology. They've got a good number of children to test this on. And I think it's very interesting The grade range that they picked was the 7th grade through the 10th grade. I am pretty young for where I am academically. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just for context sake. Have not been in high school for a few years now. I graduated, I want to say in 2016, 2017. I should know that. I don't. I was already doing college at that point, so it kind of just kind of went along. But I'm currently 20 years old, and the average age of somebody in 10th grade, I believe, is around 15, 16-ish. So I'm a little bit out of the demographic here, but I certainly do remember a lot of my time as a 7th through 10th grader who had a lot of issues with anxiety and depression. So I'm curious to see as we go along to see their logic and see what kind of stuff they have with that being said. So let's hop back into it here. Let me figure out where I was. Another analysis of the same data published in JAMA Pediatrics found that a higher than average frequency of social media and television viewing predicted more severe symptoms of depression over the 4-year timeframe. The findings highlight, quote, the negative consequences of screen time for adolescents' mental health, end quote, Byers told SciPost. Quote, the 2 longitudinal studies have shown a robust effect of screen time on symptoms of depression and anxiety. Thus, parents, pediatricians, medics, and developers of health interventions aiming to reduce or prevent anxiety and depression among adolescents should take screen time into account as one of the triggers of anxiety and depression. It is still unclear why some forms of screen time are associated with anxiety and depression, while other forms of screen time are not. All right, breaking away from the article. Now, while reading that paragraph, I was already thinking, we're getting to the end of the article here, and we haven't talked about video games specifically. So I'm hoping that they're going to get to that pretty quickly here. And it looks like they're about to explain a little bit of that. For example, playing video games was not a predictor of either depression or anxiety, which may be because gaming has become more of a social activity. Quote, compared to their forerunners 15 to 20 years ago, the average video gamer is not socially isolated. It has been shown that more than 70% of gamers play their games with a friend, either physically, together, or online. End quote, the researchers noticed in their study. The researchers also found some evidence that interacting with media that promoted upward social comparisons was associated with reductions in self-esteem, which in turn was associated with increases in depressive symptoms. The most important caveat is that we believe that content is key. However, we did not examine content yet. I do not believe that the simple act of engaging in screen time has negative consequences, but what adolescents expose themselves to while engaging in screen time. Thus, future research should focus on what kind of content triggers anxiety and depression in adolescents, Bowers explained. All right, so that is the end of the article there. Wow, that's really interesting stuff here. Let me just start off just by saying a lot of parents don't seem to have this attitude that the guy seems to exhibit at the end, talking about how screen time inherently is not bad. It very much appears that it's related to the content they consume. I know a lot of parents say you're spending too much time in front of the TV, you're spending too much time playing video games, you're spending too much time on social media, etc., etc., etc. When in reality, a lot of the harmful things about screen time is not necessarily about the screen itself. It's about what the viewer is viewing. So if I were to go on Reddit and I were to go on a politics subreddit, that's probably going to be a lot worse for my mental health than it would be if I went on Rare Puppers or a subreddit about animals or jokes or fun stuff like that, because it's more about the content. Similarly with TV, if I were to spend a lot of my time watching TV shows or watching movies that were violent in nature, or maybe not violence, but things like dramatic that had a lot of tension, then maybe I would end up with more problems than if I just watched TV shows that were happy in nature, more fantasy based, maybe kids' TV shows that are just consistently high note, that type of thing. With video games, I don't think I need to explain the rise in popularity of battle royale games like Fortnite. Those types of games have risen in popularity massively over the last few years, and they're completely based in multiplayer. So if I were to log into Fortnite and I were to start a game of a battle royale game like Fortnite offers, everyone I'm seeing in the game is a real person. There aren't any robots playing against me. So I can't necessarily always talk to them. Maybe I have teammates, but they're all real people. I'm not just playing a pre-programmed activity that the developers gave me. And sometimes with those types of games, I'm doing those with friends on Discord. So I have a group of friends who I say, hey, let's all get in a phone call together. Let's all join a party. And then we're all going to play play in a team of 4 on Fortnite. And games like that are multiplayer, and then you add the aspect of playing with somebody you know in real life or on the internet, something like that, and you're actually talking to them, you might be strategizing a little bit, or you might just be joking around and having fun. That type of social interaction, that talking back and forth to each other, that is healthy, honestly, especially nowadays where you can't really get around and go to like baseball games or anything anymore. What you have to do is you have to talk to people online. You have to have friend groups where you say, hey, let's all hop together and play Warzone. Let's all play Mario Maker. Like there's games we can play together. And you can't really do that with social media. You can say, hey, let's share this meme. Hey, take a look at this funny YouTube video. And with TV, movies, kind of, you can organize watch parties and stuff. But it's pretty clear that the most obvious way to connect with people during a time like this whole coronavirus thing is hopping on a phone call with somebody, hopping on Discord or voice chat of some kind, and just playing video games. Play games. You can play some casual games like Uno or Clue or Monopoly. There's a lot of those online for free or otherwise. You can play them on platforms like a Nintendo Switch, or you can just play them on your phone, or you can play them on your computer. I would like to shout out, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, on the phone, there is an app called Plato, Plato. It has changed a lot, so I don't know if it's still the same, but it's an app that I've been using for a while, and it's a super duper easy way to just connect with people, whether those people are new people or just people that you already know and you want to connect with. You can just play games with each other. You can play games like, I don't want to say you cannot play Uno because that's copyright. You play their version called Ocho. And there's a bunch of cool things like Battleship, and I'm blanking all of a sudden. They just recently added bowling, and there's a couple of other really fun things. There's a large handful of games, both from like pretty simple things like Uno to pretty interesting like whodunit games. There's a game called Conspiracy where you can get like 6 to 8 people in the game, and there's a certain number of spies, and then everyone has to figure out who it is. Really interesting concept. If you're the type of person who wants to play that kind of thing, play like basic card games or just little handheld tabletop games with people, I'd recommend checking that app out. So, with that being said, I'm not ending it quite yet. Let's just reflect on this. I think it's very interesting. Let's come back to the title. Social media and television use predict depression and anxiety in teens, but not necessarily video games. That's interesting. That's very interesting to me. It's a very surprising development, I would say. Even though it makes sense. Once I think about it, it makes sense. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And yeah, it actually makes sense. Yeah, okay, I get it. That makes sense. That's cool. It's very interesting. I think more people need to get into video games. I've heard a lot of people say, man, I'm getting older and I just don't have any interest in video games anymore. I guess I'm becoming an adult. In reality, I kind of feel like that's kind of a cop out. It's like you don't want to have the negative connotations of playing video games frequently. And one thing they even said in this article was that unlike the way it used to be, identifying as somebody who plays a lot of video games does not necessarily mean that you're socially isolated anymore. The negative connotation is probably still there for a bunch of old people, but just play video games. Play games, have fun, lighten your mood. It's a way to keep yourself healthy, and it might not have the same negative connotations that you have if you spend that free time on Facebook or watching television, because it engages your brain, lets you connect with people. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is play more video games. That is what we stand for here at the Danny the Two podcast. Every single person on my team, every editor, every producer, every script writer, me, the host, obviously, we all stand for playing more video games. So if you want to join my Discord server, link is in the show notes. It's in the show notes. Yeah. Maybe you can hop on and say, hey, does anybody want to play some Monopoly? And then somebody might want to play Monopoly with you. So join my Discord server if you're not banned. I got a couple people banned on that, but you're probably not if you're listening. And if you are listening to this when you're banned, that's impressive. I'm proud of you. I'll unban you. No, I won't. Yeah, with that being said, I think that's a wrap.